Hey guys, Rafe here from Evolve Move Play. We've been getting a ton of questions coming in. We figured we'd start filming some answers for you guys as a kind of a question and answer thing. So if you're interested in, if you have a question for us, go ahead and send it in. The question that we're going to answer today comes from Lucas Demovia. He posted a question in response to a video I put up about why do I have such a huge emphasis on movement in the natural environment. And the point that he made was that human beings have lived in structures that we've built for thousands of years. And that this is part of our natural environment in the same sense that the hive is part of the natural environment for an ant. And this is true. Human beings are animals that can build and animals that live within the buildings that they do. But we have to understand the historical context that time spent indoors has been expanding just rapidly now. For the vast majority of our existence, any sort of hard physical labor that we're going to do, the majority of it is going to be outside. If we look at the world even right now, 60% of the world's population are farmers. If we go back to 100 years ago, we're looking at 95% of the population was farmers. So a sedentary lifestyle indoors and a habit of training physical qualities indoors is very new. And in the same sense, the structures that we build around us are, sure, they're part of our natural environment in a sense, but if the majority of the world was farmers, they're not living in cities surrounded by large cityscapes. So no, we don't have a ton of evolutionary history kind of adapting to the city or adapting to moving in an indoors environment. And if we start thinking about what the outdoor environment provides, what the natural environment provides relative to indoors, we'll see that it's essentially a more nourishing kind of movement environment. In the same sense that we're starting to understand that foods that have been part of our diet for a really long time are superior to modern industrial foods. Movement patterns that are part of our evolutionary history are more relevant and more developmental and more nutritious for a human being. So let's take an example. One of the big things that people do within kind of the broader physical culture, the fitness culture right now, is run on treadmills or stair steppers or ellipticals or whatever it is. Well, an elliptical is obviously not natural, or is a very recent innovation in any event. But let's take the running on the treadmill. So there are some things that happen with your gait that are different because the treadmill is not the ground. But even if we pretend that it is the ground, it's just flat ground that we're running on indoors. If we compare that to running outdoors, it's lacking a lot of nourishment. When we're running outdoors, we're seeing the environment move past us. That's engaging attention. That's actually changing the way that our brain is engaging with the environment. If you're taking a run in the woods, on trail running, which is really what most people should do as far as running, what you'll find is that you're going to be going up and down slopes. The ground is going to be uneven. If you're running barefoot, you're going to be on mud, turf, rock. All these varying surfaces are going to be feeding your foot different kinesthetic feedback, different proprioceptive feedback. Rocks may be deforming the joints in the feet, increasing the structural integrity of your feet. If you're running through the woods, you're exposed to phytochemicals from trees that have been found to have antidepressant effects. You're exposed to potentially microbes in the soil that have been found to be how the immune system is supposed to calibrate itself. Other ones have been found again to have antidepressant effects. You're seeing green space as you run. There's also studies that find that when we take a walk in the woods, that the visual stimulus of looking at green stuff, in addition to the chemicals that we're breathing in from the trees, in addition to the potential microbial stuff, all of that is found to have a replenishing effect on the psyche, similar to taking a nap. So if you take a walk for 20 minutes, you're going to be able to go back to work with as much sort of refreshment as if you had taken a nap. So the natural environment is more physically nutritious in a sense than that indoor environment. And in the same sense, when we start thinking about doing movement in an urban environment, versus a natural environment, we're going to see the same type of thing. So yes, you're getting outside, potentially in an urban environment, but you're not exposed to the phytochemicals from plants nearly to the same degree. You're not exposed to as many beneficial microbes from soil. You're not exposed to as much diversity in terrain. You're not exposed to as much surface variation. You're not exposed to as much variation in the hardness of the ground. You're not exposed to as much variation in the surfaces that your hands are interacting with. So if you do all of your climb ups on walls, you're going to be developing a grip that works on 90 degrees. But on a branch, you're going to be developing grips that work on all these different structures. The hand, the callus on your hand will develop in a much more even way when you're training in nature, because this branch here is different from this branch, is different from this branch, and so all of the different sections of my hand get tensioned by different branches in different ways. In the same sense, what we see with a lot of parkour athletes is that they get overuse injuries from doing repeated patterns, and those patterns are not as repetitive in the natural environment. So if we think about climbing up over the top of an object, when that object is a concrete wall, we can do the same pattern every time. But if that object is a tree branch that has variations in the width of the branch, diameter of the branch, the slope of the branch, the tackiness of the branch, whether the branch bends, sways, moves side to side, there's a lot more kind of food for the nervous system. There's a lot more variation in how the technique will come out, whether you can use a trunk behind you. So essentially we have much more diversity and much more complexity when we're trying to solve the same types of problems in a natural environment. So this is going to produce an athlete who's more adaptable, more resilient, and less injury prone. A lot of good track coaches right now are moving to doing a lot of barefoot training on turf as opposed to track training, even though they compete primarily on the track. This is a violation of the idea of specificity of adaptation to imposed demand. If you follow that to its absolute kind of logical end, you only train in the environment that you are going to expect to have to perform. But what they find is that when you add in the natural environment, because it's essentially more nourishing, and less overstressing to the body, that you develop athletes who have stronger feet, who have better biomechanical function, and who become injured less frequently. So in the same sense, when I look at parkour athletes, when I look at athletes training on hard floors in the gym, and movement culture concepts, I think that they're missing a lot of potential nutrition, and they're exposing themselves to a lot of potential for overuse because of the way that they're interacting, or because of the types of environments that they're interacting with. Now, I'm not against training in the urban environment. I think that if you want to be a generalist mover, if you want to be effective at parkour, you need to be able to move well through an urban environment, because that's where most of us live. If you're great at movement but can't get over a wall, then you've kind of missed something. What I found is that movement in the natural environment does have a higher degree of transfer to the urban environment than vice versa, but it's not perfect. If you want to be good at rails, you want to be good at walls, you need to be exposing yourself to those. What I would caution people is to just be aware that those environments are going to give you a less kind of global adaptation, less kind of total capacity in training in them, and that they're more likely to expose you to overuse and injuries. So to be the best urban tracer, I think that you should train in the natural environment at least part of the time to give yourself kind of more nutrition in your movement. So that's kind of why I focus on it. And for me personally, I feel like I've reached a pretty good level in my urban parkour practice. I'm not world class. I don't think that me trying to become world class is as valuable to people in general as focusing on this natural environment movement, which so few people have focused on, showing this other pathway and where we can kind of go with that. And so I'm okay with sacrificing a little bit of this perfect generalist idea to be a specialist in movement in natural environments, because that's really relevant to the gift that I want to give to everybody else. That's where I'm most passionate, that's where I have the most joy, and it's where I think I can do the most good for people. So that's kind of the answer to why the national environment.